Welcome to Glora, truly a diamond in the rough. A lush, grassy planet in the Admiral system, Glora is approximately 714,000 light-years away from the galactic core. The planet itself is widely made up of grasslands, with the occasional forest breaking up the terrain. Most strikingly, the planet's atmosphere is filled with strange bubbles, which aren't just there to look pretty. Glora is also the first planet on the channel to feature an aquatic portion, home to chaos-seeding fish and terrifying leviathans, which aren't even the greatest danger on this planet. So charge your blasters and get your identification ready, and let's dive into the world of Glora. The documentation of this planet proved to be a difficult challenge, especially for only being the second episode of the Amanogawa Chronicles. Glora's star system, which the crew have dubbed the Admiral system, happens to be the nexus for a lot of black market trade in the region. The system itself is entirely controlled by a faction of ruthless pirates, which made it a rather difficult place to film. For starters, we had to get special permission to even enter the system, from both the system's newly founded government and the Sentinel security forces trying to recapture the region. Glora was once where the local outlaws grew their supply of nip-nip buds, a plant native to the planet Baleron, known for its ability to induce certain pleasing pheromones from the bodies of the gek. Growing nip-nip buds without the proper license is highly illegal, and as a result, most nip-nip farms are shut down after only a few weeks or months. There were once so many nip-nip farms on Glora that some of the local flora and fauna have changed around the illicit plants. When the Sentinels found the farms, they immediately took over the entire planet and put it under heavy lockdown, even going so far as to shoot potential trespassers on sight. As mentioned earlier, we were given special permission to film here, but the Sentinels didn't seem very lenient, shall we say. We were often shot at due to various misunderstandings, or perhaps even as a warning to remind us that we weren't permanent inhabitants. Worse still, many of the local outlaws attempted to chase us out of the system. The Amanagawa's defense crew has begun to develop a reputation with pirates in the region, which immediately started us off on the wrong foot. The fact we had to negotiate with the Sentinels didn't help either. Interesting as it may be, we're not here to focus on the politics of the system. During our studies, we discovered some of the most strange lifeforms here we've ever seen. From magical flying spheres to eldritch horrors with a predisposition towards fatherhood? Truly, Glora has some of the most unique flora and fauna we've covered to date. Starting at the very base of the food chain, one thing you've probably noticed about Glora is that its atmosphere is filled with bubbles. Upon close inspection, they were found to be quite sticky and even have a very sweet taste, like a syrup or a nectar. Detailed analyses of the substance revealed it was produced by the various plants on Glora and carries thousands of seeds and pollen per square inch. Carried on this strange substance, they are transported by various means to their recipient plants. We have dubbed this substance Flectar, a contraction of the phrase flying nectar. It is the base of much of the food chain on Glora, and an important method by which the planet's flora reproduce. But how does it help them transport their seeds or pollen? Well, the first answer is simply by being carried on the wind. The plants produce the Flectar and deposit their seeds and/or pollen into it, and then release the substance into the wind. The seeds inside are carried by the wind to a faraway location and grow there. If any Flectar remains near where the plants have rooted themselves, they can even use the substance to boost their own growth. However, only a small minority of plants fall into this category. The reason Flectar is so sweet and so sticky is because it is meant to stick to or even be eaten by the local wildlife, which inadvertently consume the seeds inside the Flectar and disperse them around the planet. Sometimes these seeds even travel up the food chain, waiting patiently on or in their host's flesh until a predator eats them. But more on this later. Speaking of seed dispersal, here comes the first organism on our list. The Hydnoi is a unique subterranean organism that spends most of its time seeking out Flectar and plant matter. They use their large eyes to identify potential food and potential threats, while slowly creeping forwards in search of their next meal. Under the ground, they resemble brittle stars, albeit with a thicker center and many more legs. They use said legs to dig through the ground, allowing themselves to move forward while keeping mostly submerged. When it's time for them to feed, they dig around a potential food source, uprooting the plants they want to eat. Then, its central, upward-facing mouth literally works like a biological blender, tearing up anything above it and then consuming it. Then, it moves on. It also will occasionally eat Flector. However, since Flector floats, this is a bit of a difficult task for them. To obtain Flector, they simply reach a tentacle up into the skies and catch some, then moves it to its mouth underground. However, some Hydnoi have a preference for flesh, and act as ambush predators, devouring anything that hops over them, such as the diminutive Runubs. But more on the Runubs later. Strangely enough, the Hydnoi have a strange relationship with the Nip-Nip farms that once existed on this planet. Nip-Nip buds seem to drive Hydnoi senses into a frenzy, within which they will voraciously eat anything and everything nearby, including living animals if they can get their tentacles on it. This results in Hydnoi literally ripping Nip-Nip farms to shreds in search of the delicious Nip-Nip buds that they crave. Our current theory suggests that the Hydnoi is designed to seek out a specific chemical that the local flora, or perhaps even the local fauna, produce. And Nip-Nip buds happen to produce multiple times more of this chemical than whatever produces it on Glora. This, of course, sends the Hydnoi into overdrive, and it basically just goes crazy and tears up whatever's in its path. What exactly this specific chemical might be, however, is currently a mystery. Speaking of mysterious things, a close relative of the Hydnoi are the Myoglots. Myoglots are a strange, horrific-looking creature, composed of thick skin and an excessive number of eyes that would make it right at home in the Halloween decor aisle. Despite their appearance, they are actually quite docile and even friendly at times. They feed by grabbing or scooping up nuts and Flector in their crowns, and then sucking it down the drain-like mouth on top of their head. To drink, they simply sit in one place during a rainstorm with their mouths open, and let the water just gather in their throats, similarly to how you probably did when you were a kid. They use a combination of mucus and Flectar to create a sticky substance to help swallow, guiding their food down their throats with the microscopic cilia, similar to how sponges guide water through their bodies with its microscopic flagellum. Most interestingly, Myoglots are surprisingly good parents. When the females lay their eggs, the males scoop said eggs into their crowns, along with as much Flectar as they can carry. The eggs then hatch and live in the male's crown, or mouth, until they are old enough to roll out into the world. During this time, the males eat nothing, as it would endanger their offspring. After leaving their father's crown, they stick by him until they grow old enough to leave and make their own way in the world. It may seem strange that the male of a species would have to carry their young all on their own, and not the female, as is typical for Earth creatures, but this odd style of parenting is not unknown to Earth's creatures. Certain frogs, insects, and birds are raised exclusively by their fathers. Most ratites, the group of birds that includes emus and ostriches, are raised by their fathers, whereas the only role that the female plays is laying their eggs, notably in the nests that the males built. Another parallel are giant water bugs. After mating, the females will literally glue their eggs to the male's back, where he will keep them for weeks until they hatch. Most famously, seahorses have essentially switched their biological gender roles. Males not only carry their young, but also carry and incubate them prior to birth. The female deposits her eggs into a special pouch the male carries, wherein the male fertilizes them and carries them until they hatch. Speaking of strange gender roles, here comes the next life form on Glora. This is a Runub, which happens to be the second smallest organism on the planet, at least by mass. Most Runubs fill a niche similar to insects or urchins on Earth, and as such they are usually right at the bottom of the food chain, feeding primarily on plant matter as opposed to Flectar, which is an unusual dietary preference for Glorian fauna. Their closest comparison on Earth, urchins, regularly feed on kelp, gnawing away at the bottom of their stems until they completely break the kelp from the seafloor. Otters and other sea creatures keep urchins at bay, keeping them from completely decimating kelp forests. However, the overfishing of urchin-eating fish and the historical hunting of otters for their pelts creates a problem. Without their predators to worry about, urchin populations can grow unchecked, thus felling entire kelp forests. It is thought that something similar has happened or is happening on Glora. Runubs are so voracious that the trees on Glora only exist in small, short-lived pockets spread sporadically over the surface of the planet. In fact, when the pirates first landed on Glora, there were no trees to speak of, save only a few lucky individuals or small pockets that were usually eaten within a few days. So why are there more trees today? Well, one thing to note is that Runubs seem to love to feed upon star brambles, more so than the native plants. Star brambles are very quick-growing plants, and often grow very quickly after seeding. Perhaps prior to the introduction of the invasive star bramble, the forests on Glora were even rarer, being entirely consumed by the Runubs. Yet once star bramble was introduced, it distracted the Runubs from eating the local flora, allowing the native forests to grow and flourish. Perhaps, now that a new ecological biome has appeared, forest specialists will appear in the near future. Going back to the Runubs themselves, another interesting fact about their biology is that their genetic makeup can be a mix of more than two parents' genes. On Earth, most creatures need two individuals to procreate, with both parents supplying half of the genes. However, Runubs can have up to 7 parents, each parent providing a seventh of the genes. During mating seasons, the female mates with as many males as possible until she eventually lays her eggs. Which parent's genes the eggs get is more or less completely up to chance. Each new Runub could be anywhere from an exact clone of their mother to a hybrid of 7 different individuals. You might be skeptical at the idea of such a system emerging, but stranger things have happened on Earth. The kings and queens of some crazy ant species, for example, will regularly mate with their siblings, yet somehow avoid the effects of inbreeding. This works because crazy ant queens and crazy ant kings are genetic copies of their mothers and fathers exactly, meaning their genomes do not mix, and as such, it is less likely that they will get undesirable effects from inbreeding. More similarly to Runubs, a life form on Earth known as Tetrahymena also has an excessive amount of genders. Coincidentally, it also has 7 of them, although its reproductive cycle is slightly different than Runubs. Being single-celled, Tetrahymena can and often does reproduce by splitting itself in two, producing 2 exact clones of the original cell. However, if necessary, 2 individuals can mate, mixing their genetic information and creating 2 new cells in the process. What makes Tetrahymena unique is the number of genders it has. Each of its 7 genders can mate with any individual of the species that is not of the same gender. They also cannot mate with themselves this way, that's what binary fission is for. However, it's about time to leave the land of Glora and head to the seas, a place that some of the most terrifying organisms on the planet call home. A balmy greenish blue, the waters of Glora are almost tropical in appearance, despite the planet's slightly colder than Earth climate. Deep below the surface, our Discovery crew discovered a total of 4 classes of life form, each with their own fascinating lifestyles and quirks. The first life forms you are likely to encounter, the achlorals and the sputtlenoses, are very fish-like in appearance. The achloral is a large protuberant fish species that widely lives off plankton. The type species, the common achloral, lives in large schools and primarily feeds at night. They bear a small glowing object on the front of their heads, the use of which is not entirely known. Current theories include either attracting mates or even attracting plankton to eat. However, they aren't alone in the seas. Whippetongs can be found beneath them, marching back and forth as they search for food on the seabed. Strangely, these creatures seem to bear a detachable tongue which they use to sense the water for food. As we follow them through the waters, more and more of them begin to congregate and head in a specific direction. It seems they are following something, but what? Just up ahead, a small school of fish can be seen swimming just above the seabed. These are known as sputtlenoses, a species of bottom-dwelling fish. The word sputtle was once used to refer to the act of digging up weeds and stubble, particularly after a harvest. It can also mean a mess or confusion. Both these meanings describe the acts of a sputtlenose very well, as sputtlenoses use their long snouts to sift and dig through sand, uprooting and eating marine plant life. Achloral and whippetongs often follow in their wake, eating the bits of debris that this act uproots. One variety of achloral, the oil-faced achloral, even goes so far as to hunt the small organisms sputtlnoses scare, similarly to how some kites, such as the whistling kite, will prey on small animals fleeing wildfires. Back to the sputtlenoses, interestingly, they see almost directly up instead of forwards like most animals. This is because, being bottom feeders, danger usually comes from above. They do have some forward vision, along with an excellent sense of smell, which enables them to find food in spite of this odd little quirk. This may seem strange, but a fish on Earth has a similar feature. Barrel-eye fish are found in the deep sea, which hunt by looking for the silhouette of prey against the dim light of the sun above them. Unlike sputtlenoses, barrel eyes can twist their eyes forwards if necessary, but usually seem to keep their eyes upwards. However, these are not the only creatures that follow the sputtlenoses. One night, while traversing the depths of Glora, I was pleased to stumble across a pair of carkill patrolling the depths. Carkill are the top predators of the Glorian seas, prowling the cyan depths day and night. Akin to predatory whales from today or mosasaurs from Earth's past, they are the largest lifeforms on Glora. Typically hunting in pairs, they follow around schools of fish looking for an easy meal. Their sense of smell is particularly acute, and seems to be most sensitive to the smell of upturned or destroyed aquatic flora. If you remember, sputtlenoses regularly upturn swaths of aquatic plants and algae in search of food. Carkills, or carkillin, track down these massive uprootings, feasting on the vast variety of lifeforms that follow the sputtlenoses around. Carkill seem to mate for life, as they are almost always found in mated pairs. Interestingly, it seems like males and females react differently to different types of smells. Males seem to be much more receptive to the smell of plant matter than females, while the females seem more responsive to the smell of meat and dying or distressed animals. This implies an interesting dynamic between males and females of the species. Males are designed to track down the sputtlenose groups, while the females are better suited for hunting the sputtlenoses and other creatures they've attracted after they've found them. After a hunt is over, the females will share their food with the males, and will occasionally even regurgitate it for each other, like how birds on Earth regurgitate food for their mates and their babies. To exploit the mass schools that follow the sputtlenoses, carkillin will ruthlessly kill massive amounts of their prey, without even eating it at first. Once they've killed as many as they can, or perhaps only as many as they feel like, they will go back and eat their bounty, feasting upon it to the fullest. Whippetongs seem to know this, and use their removable tongues to taste the water around them and find where the carkill kills have landed. In fact, it's possible the reason whippetongs follow sputtlenoses around in the first place is in hopes of profiting off a carkill hunt. While observing the carkillin pair I found patrolling the depths, I came across an extraordinary event. 2 more pairs of carkillin, at least, emerged from the depths and began hunting alongside the original pair, making a massive hunting party. While carkillin are not pack hunters, they will hunt together if there's enough food to go around, sometimes congregating in large groups that decimate entire schools of fish. Beautiful as the underwater world of Glora is, it is time to leave the seas and take to the skies, where the last 2 classes of life form remain. Traversing the surface of Glora, you're likely to come across hundreds, if not thousands, of gravitino balls. Formed by strange gravitational anomalies, these highly dangerous objects are equally highly prized across the galaxy. While they are completely inanimate, you would be forgiven for thinking they can come to life, at least on Glora. The culprit behind this case of mistaken identity are the lactonewts. Lactonewts are a strange creature with no clear analog on Earth. Their mechanisms of flight aren't fully understood and seem almost supernatural. It's thought they somehow harness the power of gravitino balls to keep themselves afloat, and move themselves through the air by forming their sticky skin into cilia-like structures. Other than this, there is no clear theory on how exactly they fly. Lactonewts are actually the primary pollinators on Glora. As mentioned at the start of the video, Glorian flora reproduces by a substance known as flectar. Among other uses, this substance attracts herbivores and, unbeknownst to them, spreads the genetic material of the plants across the planet. The reason lactonewts are so good at pollinating is due to how they consume flectar. They will fly in large groups, usually circling the skies but occasionally racing along the ground, picking up as much flectar in their skins as possible. Yes, you heard me right, lactonewts eat through their skin. Lactonewt's skin is much more like molasses, very viscous and sticky. Anything smaller than a runub that sticks to it likely won't get out very quickly. Once flectar or other biological matter sticks to it, the lactonewts absorb and digest it inside. Then they excrete the remnants as waste, along with the seeds of whatever plants were in their dinner. Because of how fragile their skin is, they're very delicate and should never ever be touched. Also, touching them risks getting your hands stuck and digested inside their stomachs, which I'd warrant would not make for a banner day. So please, for goodness sake, stop trying to touch the lactonewts! Anyway, one thing that happens rarely on Glora is the transformation of female lactonewts into males. For most of the year, every last lactonewt on Glora is a female. However, due to some unknown trigger, a select few will transform into males, which have tougher skin and look much more like flying saucers than gravitino balls. They will only remain in this shape for a short while, spinning wildly and releasing reproductive cells into the air. When one of these cells hits a female, the female internalizes it and a new lactonewt is conceived. After the course of about a day, the female will spew the little lactonewt out, covering it in some of her own skin. The newborn is then free to move and live freely, instinctually knowing what it should and shouldn't do. However, the life of a lactonewt isn't all fun and flectar. Circling above, a flock of newtoks are prowling. Newtoks are a predatory lifeform on Glora, and among the smallest. While some varieties are peaceful herbivores, the most notable varieties are carnivorous predators, searching for prey below. Their favorite prey are the lactonewts, mostly because of their thin, easy-to-pierce skin and high population count. They have large, compound eyes, which they use to keep watch in all directions at once, always watching for their prey. Lactonewts are naturally spherical and reflective to blend in with the flectar bubbles that cover this planet, which usually keeps them hidden from the eyes of predators. Here, a lactonewt is diving low and running against the ground. While I said earlier this behavior is often used to gather food from the grasses of the planet, lactonewts ground themselves most often when there are predators nearby, particularly newtoks. Newtoks seem particularly loath to come near the ground, probably to avoid hydnoi that attempts to grasp at anything that comes near. Lactonewts can easily slip out of a hydnoi's grasp by leaving some of their skin on its tentacle, but an unwary newtok would be a juicy snack. Sadly, our time on Glora has come to an end. Our permit to visit the system will have long expired by the time you watch this video, and our relations with both the Sentinels and the local renegades are becoming more and more tense. I fear that if we linger much longer, greater conflicts will arise. For more information on Glora, and the Amanogawa project in general, please visit our site linked below. Stay safe, explore freely, and thanks for watching!